love to invite those speakers that are here up to stage. And we can get started with some questions and responses and introductions.
So the intention for this panel today is really for all of you to get to discuss issues with each other and learn from each other. So we're going to try to create a space where each of you is going to get a chance to speak. We'll start out a little bit more timed and turn-taking, and then towards the second half we'll get into a bit more like where you guys can have it out with each other and discuss with each other about issues. Those of you who are watching, if you have any questions that you want to ask these guys, any comments you want to throw in, we'll try to make some space for that at the end if we have time. And I'll get more ground rules in a second, but why don't we get introductions?
I think that's a fantastic idea, Sarah. Since we've had the opportunity to introduce ourselves, and I haven't met any of you, I'd like a little introduction to who you are and what you're doing in food sustainability. Let me preface this by saying I'd like a short response. We have a limited amount of time and wonderful speakers across this stage. So maybe just 2 sentences in addition to your name. Would you willing to start?
That's good.
Hello everybody, my name is Hema, Reddy. I'm the founder and CEO of Crafty Counter. We make the most delicious plant-based hard-boiled eggs that are available nationwide at Whole Foods. I left my 14-year career at IBM to do something more meaningful with my life, and that begins with impact. So that's what we're doing.
Thank you.
So I'm Andrew Carter. I'm co-founder and CEO of Smallhold. The other co-founder is over there, Adam DiMartino. We grow mushrooms. We grow them in cities throughout the United States. We started in Brooklyn, New York, but we also have farms here in Texas, in Buda, as well as in Los Angeles. You can find our mushrooms in various grocery stores throughout the U.S., but all grown organically. Everyone gets paid a living wage. All of them are packed in sustainable packaging. All really exciting specialty mushrooms. We don't grow buttons. We grow almost everything else. And so keep an eye out for those in different stores.
My name is Semira Nikou. I am the co-founder of Better Sour, a globally inspired sour gummy candy brand that's fully plant-based, low sugar, and we're trying to be much more inclusive in the flavor profiles we have. That's much more representative of the changing face of America.
Hey there, my name is Kristin Simpson. I am the co-founder of the Cultured Carrot. We make fermented vegetable dressings out of organic vegetables and blend them with avocado oil, apple cider vinegar. And our mission is to nourish our microbiome and our guts with traditional plant-based foods. I left a career as a clinical pharmacist, seeing people's immune systems wiped out by antibiotics. So I love bringing the good guys in with microbes from the soil, and we hope to be the future of food by bringing traditional ancient processes back to our modern tables.
So those are the good guys. We're going against the bad guys. The bad guys are single-use plastics. My name is Albert Liu. I'm a co-founder of a company called 2050, and we're addressing the single-use plastic pollution problem by creating the first set of truly home-compostable utensils, fork, knife, spoon, to take plastic off the table.
My name is Shuttlesworth. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Mayawell. We make organic or bubbly prebiotic sodas made with organic and harvested agave. And a portion of the proceeds from every can sold helps to fund social impact initiatives in Oaxaca, focusing on the full circle use of the agave plant.
I feel slightly intimidated now. Y'all are an impressive group of people. Okay, so we're going to have a couple of questions for you, and then we're also open if y'all have any questions that you want to ask of each other afterwards. The way this is going to work is for the first round, each of you will have a couple of minutes to answer. 2 minutes to answer, yep. I will ding a bell if your time is up and you haven't yet finished speaking, which is a sign to kindly wind down what you were saying in the next couple seconds. Also, there's a kind of dorky thing that we do in my communities, which is If you are hearing somebody talk and you think, oh, I have that same opinion, or that feels really true to me, or I kind of want to show support to that, you can go like this, which are the fingers of resonance. And any of you can do that as well. And that allows us to show a bit of support without having to say it aloud, since we're going to be turn taking.
You can also disagree.
The fingers of dissonance.
The fingers of dissonance. I actually like these fingers more. It's just 2 items at first. So I'd really like to get a generative discussion going. We have a fantastic panel of individuals that represent a lot of CPG. I didn't actually expect so much CPG on this panel. So the first question that we're interested in finding and sourcing an answer to from you all is, what do you see as the largest obstacle that we're facing toward food chain sustainability? And I think one person on this panel may have a very forward answer. But we're going to take 2-minute responses from each panelist, and instead of going directly one direction, I'd like to just popcorn this thing around. So if you've got something that you want to immediately speak to, raise a hand, the mic can just move that direction.
I can start. So as a CPG startup, just really figuring out sourcing and balancing what you feel true with your ethics, and finding local products versus going to China, for example. We thought we figured out our glass bottle supplier, and then we found out it doubled in price, and that didn't fit with our margins, and so we could buy from China, but ethically we don't want to do that. So just balancing the ethics with finding something that works with your margins, really.
In this case, since we do have some time, I'm trying to go in 2 minutes, it sounds like the issue that you're facing is the cost versus the what? Carbon footprint of your packaging, the sustainability in general of your packaging?
Yeah, so, we don't want to use glass. We like to use glass because of the toxic profile, the recycling profile, and also just sourcing it from somebody who is ethically a good manufacturer that's using good labor practices, and isn't loading it up with lead or something like that. So yeah, really just finding quality suppliers that are going to fit within your margins.
And in this case, it's specifically focused toward your packaging. That's where you're having the hardest issue right now.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I have something similar I can add. We have a similar issue. We're a baby brand. We just launched last week. And so we really started the R&D and exploration process during the COVID era, and especially then there were all kinds of issues with supply chain, and even within the candy space, so many ingredients that were in short supply, or from China, where we are in the process, less so now, but more so than a trade war, where all kinds of tariffs and shortage issues. So it was tough. It was tough to find the ingredients we wanted, and even from a sustainability perspective, both difficult to access and also expensive. When you are launching, you're not launching hundreds or thousands, millions of products. You're small supply, and it's very, very expensive. There's no way, or very difficult to, have a product that's sustainable, margin-wise, and be, from an environmental perspective, sustainable. Especially if you're like my co-founder and I, who we come from CPG. I come with a background in law, international trade, so some experience with supply chain, but not from an environment background, environmental policy. So I'm not as familiar with kind of where packaging we can source, what's like the best technology or ingredients. It's difficult, and you want to balance wanting to be responsible and not greenwashing. So for us, we've been much more timid in terms of how we present ourselves from a sustainability perspective, because we want to make sure we're totally responsible. But there's a difficult access to resources and even, I would say, information.
Thank you. I hear some synergy there in terms of access to reliable and sustainable for your margin,
Yes.
both foodstuffs and packaging. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think we all probably have very similar concerns, but if I'm trying to think about one of the larger issues, I think everything is just extremely confusing right now, especially for consumers. And you have confusion over what natural means or what organic means. There's doubt about organic. There's, in the mushroom space, a lot of mushrooms are imported from China. There's a lot of issues with that, but I think personally most of the issue has to do with the carbon footprint. There are amazing growers in China, but you have people that think that it might be poisoned or might have some other issues with it. And you only have so much room to explain yourself to a consumer, whether it's on the pack or just their brain space through TikTok or Instagram or whatever. And it's just really difficult, and I have no idea how to do it. I mean, part of what Smallhold really tries to do is make mushrooms fun. Like, yes, the world might be ending, and yes, like we need to figure out different ways of growing food, but that's not that exciting for people, I think. I think the way to get people to eat things is by being like, hey, this is tasty, and you can have fun with it. And then as soon as you start doing research, then you're like, okay, this is a sustainable food source, or this is grown in this way that I resonate with. But getting someone there for most food products is just so difficult. And, I don't have necessarily an answer, but I do think we need to figure out ways of educating the consumer in a way different way than we're currently doing it, because I don't think it's necessarily working right now.
So I'm hearing that the primary issue you're pointing to right now is just the information war. Like finding a reliable way to educate consumers in a way that actually engages them on the topics that you, as a producer, find important.
Yeah, totally. And people to have their own opinion as well. It's fine to prefer a certain thing. It's like we talk a lot about what local means. Like we've noticed that in Texas, when people think about local, they think about where the money goes, kind of thing. Like who's getting paid for what. But when you go into some other regions, people care about the food miles or the quality or where, like how far the product has gone and decomposed in that period of time. And those both are totally valid things to care about, and it's important to care about both of them. But it's getting people to know enough to make a decision is very difficult, and I think most consumers don't really know enough to make those kinds of decisions.
So you're finding that the microcultures that you're producing inside of and also selling to is really important for the type of information that feels resonant with the consumers themselves.
For sure, yeah.
So, thank you so much.
So I want to piggyback on what you just talked about, is information. And I think this touches each one of us from a sustainability perspective, but also the consumer education. The counterpart to education is also ignorance. We've got millions, if not billions, of subsidies flowing into the wrong hands, right? There's 7 meat-based companies in the world. And the problem comes down to the consumer understanding why every single decision that they make at the shelf has got power to make a movement. Each of us, as a consumer, has got so much power. It's not just as brands, it's companies, it's launching products for the consumer, but every single decision, your share of the wallet counts. There's power in numbers, and as brands, we have that opportunity, very fortunate opportunity to raise those conversations about why are we making vegan eggs? How are eggs bad? Like, until I delved into this out of my curiosity, I didn't even know until 3 years ago before I turned vegan what factory farming is, what intensive animal agriculture is. Small farms are great, but factories are bad for the environment, for the climate, for how quickly we're going into like 2050, right? For example. So I believe that, yes, education is important, but also putting the power and the onus back on the consumer's hands and saying, you can help us. That is a dialogue that we very much need to have, but just communicating and having that power shift back to the customers, to the shoppers, is just so important to understand that it's not just brand owners, but every single one of us has the power to make change. And this event, for example, this panel is a perfect example to raise those questions. Why are honeys important? What are the honeys or the factory farmed honeys? How are they damaging the ecosystem? How chickens put in a cage can really mess up what you are, what you ate. right? In other words, so we are also doing the same and explaining to consumers that eggs, factory farmed eggs, are not nutritious for you. They are bad for the chickens. There's water usage impact. It all contributes, and we live in a synergistic ecosystem.
Thank you so much.
I'd love to follow up on that. We're talking about certain themes and what's the key obstacle for us: education, pricing, supply chain. In our case, greenwashing, which you mentioned earlier, is a big deal because it ties a lot of those things together. Consumers are being brainwashed by greenwashing, and how do you cut through the clutter and find out what's true and what isn't? In this particular example, you look at single-use plastics and you look at what's deemed compostable and even certified compostable these days. And in particular, the agencies or the entities that certify compostability are really targeting, they're designed for the bioplastics industry. And in many cases, you need to have that certification in order for the procurement managers to bring in your product. But certified compostable these days means compostable within an industrial composting facility, of which there are a couple hundred in the US, which only less than 25% of those, 15% of those accept the bioplastics, and even fewer accept utensils. So where do the utensils go? They get rejected at those facilities and they get sent to landfill, where they can last hundreds of years, just like regular plastic utensils. So the problem's not being addressed, even though there are solutions for industries, businesses to meet mandates, to satisfy legislative, bills. Canada just banned all single-use plastics as of January 1st. So did France. So it's an issue. How do you circumvent, laws and solutions that are inadequate?
Fantastic points. Bringing up both, again, the information war that we're trying to fight in educating our consumers and our legislative branches, but also the regulatory issues that are in place that are favoring companies and organizations that are using things like bioplastics that you're pointing out are treated exactly the same way as normal plastics are as soon as they end up in the landfill, which most of the time they do.
Yeah, I think it was you that mentioned one of the things that you always try to do is follow the flow of money and subsidization, VC capital, those things. I think there's this struggle to blend a push towards localization, local consumption, and industrial processes that are environmentally friendly, but also creating products that are good for us. I think as you look at some of the products in recent waves in CPG, one of the disturbing things to me is the alternative meats that are often filled with ingredients that are frankly not good for us. Highly inflammatory, just not meant to be consumed. Whereas you have companies that are much less funded trying to do more sustainable farming practices, sustainable agriculture that don't see the same level of support, but creating real products. And I think one of the things that was touched on earlier is also creating work, creating jobs that are valuable to people and communities where they also have an impact on the local economy. So I think there's a struggle to find the right blend between localization, local consumption, production, and scalable processes that are sustainable. It's one of the things that we look at in the agave industry as mezcal, tequila consumption are skyrocketing. How do you create a farming practice that allows for those communities to thrive without sacrificing some of the environmental impacts of that? So that was one of the things that we looked at when we created Mayawell, how do you create a sustainable agave ingredient that uses significantly less agave, creates the level of impact we want in our ingredient, and there's a struggle generally.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I actually would like to follow up on at least one of the topics that y'all raised. And I heard kind of two main ones emerging. One was how do you source sustainable materials for your products, and another one was how do you educate consumers on amongst the huge amount of information that's out there right now on what they should be paying attention to. So I'm going to take a quick poll of which of those would feel more exciting to y'all to discuss and give some ideas on. So first one, and you can only vote for one. First one, have you source sustainable materials? Okay, seems like we're going with that one. Okay, so what I would love is if you have any questions for each other about this, or you have any ideas for each other about best practices that you found to help with this. Let's get some Skillshare. Anyone want to start with either a question or an idea?
I think what you said was a good question. What are best practices? This is a question and pretty much repeating what you just mentioned. What are some best practices to ensure we're sourcing responsibly?
I mean, I can try. I don't know if I have the best advice, but we think a lot about packaging. Like, it's absolutely insane. And I'm looking out at some people in the audience, Travis and Adam, as their team is kind of focusing on this, and it's everyone at our company has a lot to say about packaging, and it's very easy once you're in the process trying to find packaging to get stuck with inaccurate information about where the materials come from, or how compostable they are, or how sustainable these things are. And like, the one thing that I think people probably complain about internally, but I think is great about our company is that we don't give up on that. We continue to ask questions. You ask for the material data sheets. You just keep bugging them and keep digging in to get all the information about materials, because there are affordable sources of certain kinds of packaging. I mean, I can't say for everyone what the deal is, but for Smallhold, for example, we sell produce, and it's not wet necessarily, but it was living. I mean, then you harvest it and it produces humidity, and it's in a little clamshell. And the mushroom industry at large uses styrofoam and plastic, which is absolutely a joke because it's one of the most sustainable foods on the planet, and then you just like ruin it by putting it in the stuff. And then Smallhold is like innovating by putting it in cardboard, which is also just kind of hilarious. But we are constantly looking at new types of packaging, because we also need to make it more affordable. Our packaging looks amazing, but it's expensive, and we're trying to sell to a more conventional consumer, and we don't want them thinking like, hey, my sake is too unaffordable, and if they are expensive, but if we can help with decreasing the packaging costs, that's great. Anyway, there are lots and lots of different groups out there. There are definitely third parties that I'm sure all of you are kind of working with that you can try to reach out to. We decided to do it all internally. I don't know if I would necessarily do it that way again. If you have the budget to use third parties, they can help you think through all of that. I'm just kind of dumping a lot of information, but...
Would you be willing to name some of the third parties that you've worked with, just to see?
Well, we've never worked with third parties to do it. That's the whole thing. Like, we try to do it internally, and so we work with different groups that provide the packaging. So, for example, for our current packaging, we use a group called Reddy that's provided by Semira, but they're like a cardboard company, and they did a strawberry pack originally, and then we modified it, and now they're trying to sell it to other mushroom farms, which is actually kind of amazing. Like, when we did this, the box itself is kind of part of the Smallhold brand, but when we started doing it, we're like, if everyone just copies us and they use sustainable packaging, then we'll figure out how to innovate and continue to be relevant. But I'd be okay with that, because then it's like less styrofoam and plastic in the ecosystem. And so I think that's, I guess, maybe another thing is that you should expect, if you win, for people to copy you. And that's honestly probably a good thing if you're really trying to make a change in the system.
The curse of the early adopter, first to market new packaging, but also providing meaningful steps forward. I love that mindset. Literally gonna ask.
Thanks. Going back to what you were saying about mushrooms and packaging from mushrooms, there's an interesting example of Ecovative. I'm sure you're familiar, and the relationship they had with IKEA. at least on the public relations side, where Funday was going to be, grow packaging around the products, but ultimately it turned out it wasn't scalable, right? So they had to end up licensing their technology as far as I know. Going back to what we do, we don't source packaging. We're actually innovating on the industrial side of the supply chain because utensils are similar to packaging. And what we did was we're the first in the world to take plastic injection molding machinery and modify it for food ingredients. This was thought to be impossible because, the feedstock for plastic injection molding is petroleum-based, and food-based ingredients are always water-based, water-soluble. And so we were able to do that. We filed 8 patents on the technology. So innovating upstream rather than downstream is very important. So that's what we did, but it's very difficult, right? Because all of the entrenched industrial supply chains are optimized for price. That's the whole point. That's why the disruption during the pandemic was difficult. You couldn't get the stuff where it cost more, and that put a burden on businesses. So with us, there's a disparity between a 1-cent piece of plastic or a 5 or 6 cent utensil, and that's a 5x, even though it seems like a small differential. But that's the price issue that we have to overcome.
Because that gets inflated downstream.
Exactly.
Yeah. So for anybody that's listening that doesn't know this, what he's talking about was a holy grail. Like, it didn't exist. People have been trying to find a way to create a compostable good and product for packaging that can be used alongside industrial injection molding processes for the last 15 years. Like, this is amazing work that your team has done. And I'm just wondering, out of my abject curiosity, if you could give us like 30 seconds on how you got there.
It's all in our patents. The other stuff is trade secrets. But it was a combination. Our CEO is a UCSD bioengineer, and we both work at UC San Diego. He was able to find ways not only to change the formulations, but also on the equipment side to manage the temperature, the pressure, the vacuum, and eliminating the water and air bubbles from the existing equipment. It's kind of like a Trojan horse strategy, is how I see it. We went to where the enemy lives.
Yeah.
That machinery is what created the piles of plastic pollution all over the earth. We figured out how to modify it, and this product is kind of the first of a planned, much larger line of small, compact items that are currently made with plastic. Could be golf tees, bottle caps, toothbrushes, that type of thing.
I am so excited to see where you guys go, especially because it's relevant to this issue that we're talking about right now. And at scale, you're going to go from that 5 to 1. So I'm excited to follow the work.
Thank you.
Sure, yeah, I think for us, when we started out, there was a decision to be made between glass and aluminum for our packaging. Plastic was always a non-negotiable for us, but at the time, going through COVID, you're looking at huge challenges sourcing cans. Aluminum was in scarce supply, and glass was, at the time, also thought to be more premium for our customer base, marketing premium beverage. And so, along with that, we found that co-packers on the supply side often willing to take smaller runs on things like bottles than they were on cans. And so, how do you blend those things? I think for us, it's always thought to be part of the journey. To your point, of trying to find the time that made sense to switch over to an aluminum source, which we thought was a better option just because of the lower carbon footprint as we're shipping long distance, and also the greater recyclability post-consumption. So it is definitely very much a part of the process, and what you decide today does not mean that that's what you're deciding forever. It just means what you're deciding today.
Thank you. I love that there's always a trajectory. Something that I would really love to hear out of the last 15 minutes of this panel is actually the second half of the first question that we proposed. We were choosing between two, but I'm really, really excited to hear a little bit more about what do you think best practices are for educating your consumers. I think when we look at these amazing products that we have to market and a sea of other products that have the potential to do really amazing things for the sustainability of our food chain, one of the largest hurdles that we're facing is adoption, right? It's change management at the consumer level. And part of that starts with brands, part of that starts with product, but a lot of it has to do with re-educating our consumer base. And I'm interested to hear from this panel, where do you find best practices in that?
So as a startup CPG brand and building our audience, we've just really found the generosity in the CPG space to be amazing, that people just want to donate their time and knowledge and energy. And so as far as educating customers, just going back to the idea that seeing someone else succeed doesn't diminish your flame, and that whenever we can, we try to share other brands' products and stories on our page, because we think there's a lot of synergy between somebody else's audience and who has that may know about their product but doesn't know about our product. So whenever we get a chance, we try to just be generous with our sharing our audience. Somebody who might know about mushrooms may not know about fermented dressing, and vice versa. So just, always just being really generous with social media. And also, it's so funny, my co-founder had known Hema from previously, and so we, sought out the advice of people we knew in the CPG space from early on, and she was very generous and donated her some of her knowledge to us. So just seeking out mentors, people who have been there
I do think it's an interesting conversation, because I think it's at a high level, some of the information that flows down to consumers is baffling. I think recently there was a study done that was sent to the White House that suggested that a bowl of Lucky Charms was healthier than 2 eggs. Which just, in what world could that possibly be the case? And so I think when you have things, and then at the same time, I believe in the 60s, the food pyramid was introduced, and since then the rate of obesity in the country has gone up. So how is that possible? These guidelines that come from bodies that you believe that you should trust inherently seem to not be in line with what is real. And so I think finding the right sources of knowledge and information that you can truly trust is a difficult challenge. And I think as brands, it's our responsibility to tell the truth when we are communicating with customers. There's a large competitor in my space that markets itself as a prebiotic, when in reality there's no prebiotic fiber in any of its products. And so customers don't have that knowledge yet. And so I look at that as being quite irresponsible as a brand to market yourself that way, when in reality that's not what you offer. And so I think as a community in the CPG space, it is our responsibility to have the science behind us and the product on the shelf, and to be telling the truth. And so I think that's a big part of the equation.
Thank you.
So one major challenge of making sure you have proper communication, especially when challenging certain established narratives, is that it's really, really expensive. Especially if you're a woman, minority, raising money is very difficult. I think less than 2% of female founders this past year got venture funding, or 2%, less than 2% of venture funding. So, and then once you're even in, especially if you don't have money, there's many barriers to entry, right? You have to get a distributor, they take a cut. You have to have slotting fees if you want to get into retail. You have to spend money on promotion. So having to spend on all that, it really limits your resources on kind of okay, I'm going to invest in branding, I'm going to invest in communication. So I think, I don't know if this is the best practice, but as part of the spirit of generosity, I'm ensuring that actors in this space really push the gatekeepers, the different platforms, the different spaces that are meant to showcase new food innovation to ensure they have adequate DEI initiatives, to ensure that you have inclusiveness in, when you're talking about the future of food and future of sustainability, you really need to ensure that there are sufficiently inclusive from cultural backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, and I can say, as I'm Iranian American, my co-founder is Iranian American, and a challenge we've had as part of the MENA, which is the Middle Eastern North Africa community, is that we're not even recognized as a minority. We're recognized as white, which is a legal classification that's a sharp contrast to the day-to-day realities of MENA Americans, and when it comes to discrimination and housing and work and elsewhere. So, pushing retailers and others, and even when they do have DEI conversations, that they are sufficiently expansive to include the various groups.
So we made the conscious decision talking about information to not go with paid influencers when we launched. There's so many folks that will be willingly approaching you, especially if you have got something that's going viral, to say, okay, I can sponsor your product. Taking the time to do your research in who those champions are, because it is hard. There is a lot of noise, and it's just multiplying year by year, month by month. But that decision really panned out for us because the word spreads like fire. The moment you have, hashtag ad, hashtag promo on your Instagram, it's just a signal to everybody in that space that, okay, these people are doing paid, sponsorship, so I'm just going to, get in line. This is not to discount the hard work of influencers, but in the beginning, you want organic, word of mouth, awareness. So in our case, what really happened, what really worked out is that because we said no, the organic word of mouth is spread because with folks like Tabitha Brown. She just saw the product, she ate it, and she made a genuine review of the product, which basically went viral. We sold out of all the warehouses around the country, but that was because her video sounded organic, and the amplification of what we're doing just was infinite. We couldn't have purchased that. You cannot purchase that kind of organic amplification and information about what you're doing, what your product means to the vegan or plant-based community. So just saying no means saying yes to where you stand and what is the brand promise and what your guardrails are around your product. So that's just something that has really worked out for us. So I just wanted to share that in the beginning. Just don't give in to the playbook, because just stand true to what you believe in, and it does work out in a strange, mysterious way. The universe just cooperates with you.
I think something I'm hearing from all of you is just how many things you have to be balancing in the industry right now, like ethicality, where your materials are sourced from, how you balance DEI, how you raise funding, how you get promotion from people and spread the word. I'm impressed with no doubt exhausting and rewarding uphill battle that all of you are doing to make a more sustainable food future. So thank you for that.
Yeah, right.
A little applause. Did you have something you wanted to say?
I agree with what everyone was saying. I agree with everyone, but it's funny because you bring up something that was definitely a thought process at Smallhold. We'll pay if people are preparing recipes and stuff like that, but we couldn't afford, the huge influencers to do any of this work. But the couple times we just tried to figure it out and did, the quality of the response was so low compared to someone who, has, they could just be, a random person, but the amount of people that follow them that actually care about what that person says is so much stronger. And you get that genuine response. Those people might continue to grow into an influencer, but they will continue to buy your stuff and tell people about it. And so it's more about this collaboration and growth, which was I wouldn't say it was a strategy at first, but now it's definitely something that we integrate into our strategy.
But something that came up a number of times was this idea of scarcity and market competition, and how that's forcing us toward literally advocating for our brand and educating on our brand's initiatives. Where when the thing that we are fighting, the stated thing that we are fighting, the organization and the establishment are conglomerates, right? You're fighting beef growers of America. You're fighting dairy farmers of America that are massive organizations that have banded together and they distribute information as a whole. They're all on the same initiative. They're all saying the exact same thing in every single interview. They're putting all their money in the same place. And something that I don't think is confusing, but I think has felt very frustrating for a number of brand owners that I have personally worked with, is like not having that sense of unification inside of the industry, because it's still a lot of emerging technology. There's still a lot of industry secrets. There are patents that are not yet claimed yet. And I really look forward in the next couple of years with initiatives like the Future of Food, seeing more of the industry coming together and speaking with the same voice. And thank you for being individuals there.
Totally agree with that. And also agree with the consensus that earned media is so much more valuable than paid media. You don't get what you pay for in media. I'd like to add just one more best practice, and that is, as a small brand, it can be very beneficial to create partnerships with large brands that have greater share of voice. Let them speak for you. Let them kind of create the halo effect for your smaller brand that you can't pay for to get that kind of share of voice or that many eyeballs. So look for those synergies and see where there are complementarities between what you offer as a value proposition and a brand image proposition and what they're looking for.
Phenomenal advice, thank you. We are coming to a close on the hour that we had allotted. That kind of rushed by for me. I don't know if anybody feels the same way. But I would like to get a closing statement from everyone here, and I, being the moderator, get to frame that a little bit. I know that every single one of the people that's sitting in front of you, even for you watchers at home, started off as a consumer, right? And each one of you has taken a significant degree of agency for changing, for the better, food chain sustainability and the things that consumers have the opportunity to choose when they go to the shelf. If you could tell consumers at home and here in the audience one thing about how to go from a lay consumer to somebody who has agency in that process, what would you like to tell them? And we'll popcorn this around.
Educate your kids or anybody that's younger than you. They are who is going to come next. They are who will carry the torch. We need to while we're educating ourselves and bringing change, but having conversations about it at the next book club meeting and the next happy hour, wine club, wine Wednesdays, whatever it is, involve the younger generation at an early age. And this I'm seeing because my kids, after they turn plant-based, they're having discussions with their school staff. Basically, my kid was in the basketball team. There was not a single plant-based option for him to eat. He would just eat bread and lettuce, and he would come home, or he would pack food. But that's because we're not empowering our communities enough to raise that conversation. So if there's anything you could do, take this information, discuss it with your sister, your cousin, whoever is younger than you, and have those conversations, empower them from an early age so they become, torchbearers as they grow on. That's my one message to everybody.
If I had one thing, I guess, it's just think about what you eat. I'd imagine the audience here probably definitely thinks about what you eat, but a lot of consumers do not. They go to the grocery store, they buy whatever's the cheapest, which is fine, and I do not judge that, but once you start thinking about it and thinking about what you're putting in your body and thinking about the repercussions of that on yourself and on your planet, then I would imagine a lot of the research and a lot of the work would come after that. And so just try to think, or if you know people that don't think about what they're eating, just try to convince them to start thinking about it. And also eat more mushrooms, for sure.
Kind of similar to that, allocate a little bit more time to thinking about your consumption. It could be more time researching what you eat, more time going to a local farmer's market rather than just going to, major retailer and getting everything you need there. Kind of like a daily exercise in mindfulness. We all live busy lives, but this is so important to our future and the future of our kids. So yeah, make it a regular habit.
say just keep going back to your why. And as founders, just keep telling your story because that's what resonates. And as founders, that's what we do is tell our story over and over again. But just don't grow weary in telling your story because people want to hear your why, and that's what makes it personal and impactful.
To consumers, I think I would say trust that there are people and teams working around the world. You don't know about them yet, but they're working to change the way things are, supply chains and industries as we know them fundamentally. And you'll start seeing the results soon, and hopefully sooner than 2050, when global plastic production is expected to double if we don't do anything about it. So it's happening, and just get on board, educate yourself.
Yeah, I think just to echo what others are saying, empower yourself with information. Do the work of educating yourself, listening to others, talking to others, but also think about things holistically. I mean, it doesn't start and end with food. It also extends into medicinal care and those things that you're putting into your body and the impact that they have on you. So I would just say, think about it as a holistic solution and an approach to your health and well-being, and go about it from that point.
Well, that concludes this panel discussion. Thank you, all of our panelists and speakers, for coming up and surrendering some of your very expensive South by Southwest time to speak with us in the audience, as well as the consumers who will be watching this at home later. This felt like a fruitful discussion, and like I said, I'd love to spend more time, but this is what we've got allotted. So thank you for spending the time with us, and I'd love the audience to give a quick round of applause for each one of these amazing human beings. And thank you, of course, for Future of Food for hosting us today.